what I'm going to show you now on that dripping cup of coffee is how a root cause analysis backs into work process reliability issues. So if you remember in the example, we had this cause and effect analysis. It started with a 4Y and then it turned into a 12Y. So you can see real quickly that you could say the dripping cup of coffee was because the barista did not put the lid on correctly. And that is one of the causes right here. It's just not the cause. So it is not the cause of the issue. It is simply a cause. The importance in understanding that is that there are options to mitigate risk on problems in your company. If you're looking for the root cause, you are forfeiting solutions because the root is a system, and understanding how to dissect that gives you solution options. What I'm going to show you in this example is when it says lid orientation not covered in training, how do you dissect that? You have to go look at the work process. So anyone that's ever been to a coffee shop knows that when you buy a cup of coffee, there's a simple workflow, simple flow chart or process flow. There's a few different things you can call it. There's a customer, there's a cashier, and typically there's a barista. So the cashier and the barista are sometimes two different people. You can lay this out and say, well, if I looked at the process, this is really just step one. Customer orders the coffee. Step two, cashier takes the order. That's pretty simple. Here's a 5-step process. So this is not cause and effect. This is process. This is a very simple process flow that says you're buying a cup of coffee. It really breaks into multiple steps. And you can see the different roles. They're coded that there's a customer, a cashier, and a barista. So the cashier takes the order, the barista makes the coffee, the barista delivers the coffee to the customer, and the customer drinks the coffee. So it's a work process. It is 1 step right here. It is 5 steps right here. It is 14 steps right here. So it's the same work process. There's just more detail. So you can zoom in or zoom out at a workflow at any level of detail. Customer orders the coffee, cashier takes the order, and then they write the customer's order in the cup. They sometimes verbally state it to the barista. This path is the barista. The barista is going to make the coffee. This path is the cashier ringing up the order, customer pays, and the customer waits patiently for their coffee to be done. Back up on the top path, the barista reads the order on the cup and then makes the cup of coffee, fills the coffee cup, places the lid on the cup, which we know about, and the barista reads the name on the cup and stages the coffee, and then here the customer receives the order and checks the lid alignment, ideally, and then the customer drinks the coffee. So that looks like 14 steps for a cup of coffee. If you remember, this is the step that did not go well. Barista places lid on coffee. So if your training program says place the lid on the coffee, that is what the barista is doing. But you may have 5-year baristas that say, well, actually what I do is a little more detailed. So if you look at the errors that occurred from the analysis is the lid is put on the coffee, but it doesn't line up correctly. And then the customer here didn't actually check the lid. So this step wasn't done. So if you remember on the cause map, we looked at the barista put the lid on it correctly, and then the customer didn't actually check it. So that's why you end up seeing these two alerts within the process, or where the breakdowns are also within cause and effect. And it also points out that the barista places the lid on the coffee. And if I zoom in here and show this view here, which again is just in our Excel template, it says the barista picks up the lid, and then the barista notes the location on the seam. That's a more experienced barista. And then the barista rotates the lid 180 degrees opposite the seam and then snaps the lid on and then confirms that it's on securely. And like, I thought putting the lid on was 1 step. And for some of the baristas, putting the lid on is 1 step. But for more experienced baristas, it is actually 5 steps. So if it's 5 steps, you could teach the new people this is how we put the lids on. If they've never seen it, they wouldn't know how to put the lid on. So the work process actually changes here into 25 steps. What used to be 1 step, place the lid on the cup. There's know-how in your organization that says, really, if we did it like this, it makes the error rate much lower. It's one of the ways you access know-how inside the company. So there's more that's going on inside of this. So if you looked at the cup design and you looked at the way they tipped the cup because they didn't use a straw, you're like, yeah, there's some other things you could put in here, meaning this is actually, was number 3 is the cup design. This is number 1, which was the barista putting the lid on. This is the customer not checking the alignment, and then this is the customer tipping up the cup of coffee. So I could zoom in and show you, but I'm just pointing out, we're now up to like 30 steps. If we added a little bit more to this, and you do not have to do this, but this is just an example of how you can break out the analysis. The coffee cups drips because it collected at the path, but the leak containment is ineffective. Like, why would you want to write that on there? Because it just gives you opportunity to mitigate risk. If you know how to break a problem out from a 3Y and a 4Y to a 12 or 13Y, it's going to give you options on solutions. One of the key points here is you don't have to solve all these. If you change one of these, it changes this issue. If you change 2 or 3, it makes the risk significantly lower. So you might ask, well, who actually does this? Who is actually going to check and do some kind of containment on the cup so that it doesn't leak? Like, you don't have to do that. You don't have to wrap a napkin around the cup unless you really wanted to make the likelihood of something like that occurring very low, which if you go to any tank farm at a refinery, I'm going to show you real quickly. I'll zoom in and show you what oil tanks look like on a tank farm. If you see the berm around all these tanks, that's secondary containment. It's inside the tank, but just in case that tank leaks, kind of like a cup of coffee, it would help to have a berm all the way around every single tank, which is a secondary containment to help mitigate risk. So if your organization is interested in understanding how to mitigate risk, you've got to be able to dissect both the problem and dissect work processes, which says there's more to an issue than just finding the root cause. So there's a couple skills that are very important. How to analyze a problem is very important. That's where you break out cause and effect. And how to analyze work processes is where you break out steps. So our cause mapping method that I demonstrated on the dripping cup of coffee is laying out cause and effect from a 1Y to a 3Y, 5Y, 15Y. That is cause and effect analysis on a cause map. When you lay out a work process, it's understanding the tasks, the steps of how the task is done to mitigate that risk. There are more case studies on our website. If you want to learn more about how to do this, we have case studies and weekly webinars, and definitely download that Excel template and experiment. The cause maps and process maps are all built in Microsoft Excel, so you already have this capability that you can experiment with. All right, thanks very much. Have a great day.